You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, eating off your plate when you're not looking, it's Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today on the podcast, we are getting jazzy in downtown Durham with Missy Lane's Assembly Room. And here, it's been assembled, this management dream team, like Voltron. And at the top of the head, or actually, they're all together. We have a doctor in the house making house calls, Dr. Cicely Mitchell, who is the co-owner. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And then also co-owner, and the coffee expert in-house, because they have an unbelievable coffee program as well, is Mr. Marcel Mercer.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And then you might know him from a couple of jaunts around this area. He knows his way around managing in general, the general manager, Mr. Adrian Lindsey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, some people might say, wait a minute, that guy got me drunk one time. yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Really good chance of that. I like shots.
Yeah, that's, we were kind of kidding around. We're like, we've met before, right? And we're like, I don't know, have we met? Facebook is a funny thing. I think we've just been Facebook friends for years, or maybe like hung out at a bar or something. Maybe, but it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too, my friend.
Yes, exactly. Well, we're speaking my language. I'm a musician. My whole life grew up playing something of some sort. But the thing that I gravitated to most, especially in high school and in college, was jazz. I played jazz guitar for a long time, and this is cool. So I very much appreciate y'all coming in here. Why jazz?
Oh, jazz chose me.
Okay. All right.
So I've been doing this work for about 13 years now, mostly in Durham, Raleigh, Durham, but definitely Durham. Jazz scene, met a trumpeter, fell down this rabbit hole of live jazz going on in the area. Didn't know that there were still modern day jazz players. I fell in love with jazz in high school, middle school, high school, with Guru's Jazzmatazz and that whole neo-soul movement, and it just stuck with me.
But it's crazy. I mean, you're an academic,
yes,
and you went through, you have your doctorate, and now you're back in the milieu with us in this food and beverage scene. I mean, obviously there's the music part, so you must have really, what do you still do anything with your academic background, or?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So by day, I am a statistician. My training is in biostatistics. I'm a senior director of biostatistics at Syneos Health. And so every time my dad asks me, what is it you do again? I help legal drug dealers get their drugs out on the market using statistics.
Gotcha. So this is I don't want to say a side hustle, but a passion project.
It is a side hustle on steroids.
Yeah. For real.
Which you can buy from her, apparently.
Nice.
Steroids. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. But Adrian, you're a legal drug dealer yourself, right? You're flipping bottles and selling booze to people, so that's something there, right?
Shaking things up, man.
Yeah. And I would say, Marcel, you're also a legal drug dealer if you consider caffeine a drug.
Absolutely.
Right?
You're right. You can have too much.
You can. Yeah, I'm hopped up right now, man. Let's go.
Marcel, how do you fit in the equation, co-owner and coffee, and how do you guys know each other, and how did this project come about?
You want the real answer?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we got time.
So I met Cicely. Actually, I'm a personal trainer by trade.
Oh, okay.
So I met Cicely in the gym. She was training with somebody else, and her trainer ended up leaving the company. and she wanted to continue to train. So that's how I met her. I knew her from passing, but didn't know her on a personal level. And we just became friends as we started training. And I'm gonna let her tell her side, but my side is one day she just asked me if I was dating. I said no. Pardon me. I said yes, I was. And then she circled back around a few months, and then I was single, and here we are. So.
Yeah, so we're more than great friends. We're more than great friends.
I wasn't sure. You guys are okay. Congratulations. When's the big day?
So sharing the microphone's not that big of a deal.
Close it then.
It's not at all.
So yeah, just you asked how do I fit in? I've always had a love for coffee.
Yeah.
My connection to coffee is really through my grandmother. And my grandmother, she had a routine every morning. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
I was gonna say we don't say coffee down here.
The accent's pretty big.
So I always had that love of watching her make her black coffee and then turning on music, and it didn't matter what type of music it was. So as I've gotten older, I've had that same love of coffee. So I definitely did my research, tasted a bunch of coffee, and really wanted to curate something that was special to me. It all ties back to my grandmother, which was to me my special person. So
that's very cool.
The music and the coffee goes together because it reminds me of grandma.
Yeah. So let's focus in on the jazz first, because that's what it is first, right? It's a jazz club first, and then you've got a bar and you have food and you have all these other things, and that's why we're talking food and beverage here on the podcast. But we got to get into the jazz part, because I know. When I moved here from California, I was well aware that North Carolina has a strong music scene. And whether it's, going to like the old punk roots from the 80s down in downtown Raleigh, where they had like the underground over there at the Village District, that was like a big thing. But the jazz scene, you've got like Rihanna Giddens out here. You've got, the Marsalis brothers, I guess. Well,
Branford.
Branford lives here.
Yes.
And Winton is sometimes in the area because like they'll perform, I guess, at times, right?
Yes, Jazz at Lincoln Center usually performs at least once a year in this area.
Yeah, I almost had Branford come to a performance or to an event that we did at a restaurant.
Yeah.
And he was all about it, not to like take it down to a somber note, but we all remember that stupid time when there was a shooting in South Carolina at the AME church and 9 people passed. When I was at Midtown Grill, we put on, our chef was from Charleston, and he was now cooking with us up here. So we did this thing called North Cook South, and we did 9 courses for all 9 people. And we had jazz. We had Peter Lamb and the Wolves, who were fantastic, And I was like kidding around. He's like, who we should get? We should get Branford Marsalis. And I go, oh, well, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. How do you guys do that? Right. He's like, well, I have his like management number, and so he gave me the number, and I called, and it just so happened that Branford was in Tokyo at that time. And I got a message back and was like, oh, man, on any other day I'd be there. I'm like, I just had an email with Branford Marsalis. For those who don't, like, for me, cool. I knew him all because he and Sting collaborated on Nothing Like the Sun. And that was when I first heard him. And I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. And then my brother would play it all the time. Older brother, tried to be romantic with the ladies. He's like, yeah. Got like the Winton Marsalis, the Branford Marsalis. You had that in the 80s. That was very smooth. So talk to us about the vibe there, or the stage, like what's the setup like for jazz musicians when they come in?
So the vibe at Missy Lane's, it suits at least 2 purposes. One thing that I learned over the 13 years of doing this, people's relationship to jazz is different, right? Some people want it as a social backdrop and kind of soundtrack to them just chilling with their friends and being able to talk and lounge and in a social setting. So that's the front room of Missy Lane's, where the cocktail bar and lounge is. Soft seating, baby grand piano in the window, and that's where we usually have more an acoustic jazz setting. We do our jam sessions there. North Carolina Central usually commandeers the jam session. Branford is an artist, a teacher in residence there.
Oh, cool.
And he
wow.
did pop up a few months ago and played straight, just off the street with his saxophone and played. So that was amazing.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So that's usually the front room. And then in the back is the showroom. And that's where we have a proper stage, lighting, sound. If you've been to Yoshi's or Ronnie Scott's in London or the Blue Note in New York,
Yep.
it's that kind of setting where you are an audience member, you bought a ticket. There's this amazing energy and vibe between the audience and the performer, and so that's the setting back there. So two different ways. Some people want to be audience members on a date night or what have you. Grown and sexy kind of in the back.
Yeah.
And then in the front, it's a little bit more relaxed, acoustic. Bring your friends, grab a drink, hear a little bit of solo piano in the back. So those are the two vibes.
And are you in the showroom? Is there food and beverage available during the shows, or that's like you go?
There is food
Yeah,
and
okay.
beverage available. You can QR it from the table,
Oh, cool.
and a server will bring it to you. Yep.
Nice. And you're the one that's booking the shows. You're the main booker.
I'm the main booker.
Okay.
I do have a production manager, Tess Mangum. She's been with me for almost 13 years. She assists with some of the booking, but I'm the main booker.
Okay. And one of the main reasons is you just announced your lineup for the fall, right?
Yes.
So what are some of the headliners or stuff that you want people to know that jazz fans should come and see?
So I have to announce that Shabaka, he goes by Shabaka now.
Okay.
He used to be Shabaka Hutchings. He's from London. He's a saxophonist by trade, but also plays flute. So, that whole new wave of like meditative jazz with the flute, Andre 3000 kind of blew it up.
Yeah.
But like Shabaka is the master of that sound,
Okay.
right? And a practitioner of it. Not taking away from Andre 3000 who dabbles in it.
Yeah.
No, Shabaka is the man.
That's
And
it. That's his expertise.
Yes, I'll lead with him. So we're very excited to have him kind of leading the season. We also have Nicolay, who is part of a duo in this area called the Foreign Exchange. And they're celebrating their 20th year of their first album called Connected. And so Nicolay is going to also perform a celebration for that album.
Cool.
Yeah, and then we got a bunch of newbies that are coming on the jazz scene, whether it's Tabor Gable, who is amazing on keys, and also Jonathan Barber, who is leading the way on drums. So one thing which has kind of become a calling card is I like to find people right before they're about to blow.
Yeah.
And so I've done that before with Art of Cool. So when people didn't know who Anderson .Paak was, when people who didn't know who Kamasi Washington or Robert Glasper or any of these people, we were the people who presented these people first.
Very
and
cool.
So we're taking that same kind of.
So it's kind of like a rite of passage. If you come through Missy Lane's,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
on the up and coming
Oh
list.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, and what part of you creating this, or you two together, obviously the coffee, wanted to have a swanky, like upscale, and then Adrian obviously take us through it, the cocktail program and the food program to be important. I mean, you could have just had jazz and then be like,
Right.
yeah, you can get your drink or whatever, but
No, you have to build it was building a space that we wanted to come to. Plus, we saw in the market that there really wasn't kind of a fancy place, but still where you could, dress however you want. We don't have a dress code or anything like that, but just something a little bit more vibey, mature,
Yeah.
sexy, grown. Some of me and my friends will save that dress, until you go to Atlanta or Charlotte or something like that.
now you don't have to save
Now
that
you
dress.
don't
You
have
got
to
an
save
excuse
that
to wear
dress.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool. All right. Well, and so you guys hired on Adrian to help you with that? Is that kind of how it
Yes.
flowed?
So Adrian and I go way back.
Yeah.
He was a bartender at West
Revolution.
End. Well, Revolution.
is where we at.
Revolution.
Yeah, Revolution.
And then West End Wine Bar.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I would come in there and they would do a Wine Wednesday
Yep.
special. And I was in the middle of doing Art of Cool, and everybody kept asking for my time. And it was hard to do these one-off meetings. So I started this thing called Office Hours at West End, where then I'd buy a bottle or two, and then people would come and just pick my brain about whatever. And so that's how...
Wait a second. Office hours with Dr. Cicely. So, like,
Yeah.
they're trying to get on stage at the show, or they're trying to help you book their
a little
favorite
bit of
artists?
everything.
Okay.
A little bit of everything. People wanted to know how we were, launching Art of Cool and how do you launch a big idea. Some people just wanted to kind of hang and talk and, just vibe out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would do office hours, and he was like my main guy.
You were the facilitator.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. But, West End Wine Bar is a really neat place to kind of hang out. Olivia Gray does a great job over there, and it's kind of like a grown and sexy place,
Yeah.
Great atmosphere. It's good for talking. A lot of couches and stuff like that, kind of like we have at Missy Lane's, more like a sofa bar, upscale sofa bar, I'd like to say.
And so when you were handed the keys to the beverage program and being the general manager, did you already have an idea of the vibe, or like did you get to create a lot of it? Where'd you come in on that?
Well, so we should go back about 7-8 years ago. Cicely and I looked at opening up a place on Paris Street, but that fell through, and so the idea's always been in the back of my mind. And I think I got a call last January from Cicely. It's like, "Are you ready?" Like, whoa! I live in Greensboro now. I have 4 babies, so no, I'm not ready. And so I came on as a consultant initially and did the initial bar program, and I kind of went to we talked, and it's like I think 1920s kind of speakeasy cocktails would go really well here. And so an initial cocktail list reflected we had classic cocktails from the 20s, and then we took and remixed some classic cocktails, and then we had a section for Missy Lane's assembly cocktails. Those are things that we were just coming up with, a lot of seasonal cocktails or just stuff that, I had been holding back on, things I made at home because I like drinking at home.
Yeah.
And so we just put all those things together and came up with a really cool cocktail list. I think the whole idea is like focus on some seasonal items, focus on some trendy items, and then always have classics, because classics are classics. They never go away. Everybody wants an old fashioned. Everybody thinks about a Negroni.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys think about Negronis too. So
He saw that walking in.
man. So,
Martinis, right? Martinis are cool again.
Martinis are making a comeback, and I'm super excited about that. I've always hated that people didn't like classic martinis. I understand because everybody's drinking Martini and Rossi. I don't know if I should say that or not, which is not the best vermouth.
Yeah.
They're our sponsor, and now the show's got to come to
Oh
an
my
end.
god, man! I take it back, then. I take it back.
Kidding, man.
So now you got this great vermouth thing taking place now.
Yeah.
People putting out some incredible vermouths, and then you just so now you have the opportunity to. What I like to do is people say, well, I don't like vermouth because everybody likes to do the in and out or call it a martini and only get straight liquor. And so I just say, hey, just try this vermouth first. And people try it and they're like, wow, I didn't know vermouth could be so good. And it's like, yeah, it's a whole new world. It's not your grandfather's vermouth anymore.
Well, the point of the martini was you weren't just going to have straight gin or vodka,
Yes.
whatever that might have been. It was to give it a little bit of a flavor and kind of mellow it out a
Yes.
little bit. But the problem was Cinzano and Martini and Rossi and all those guys made a crap product.
Really bad
and
product.
it ruined it. It's kind of like what happened to what White Zinfandel did to rosé,
Yes.
right? It's like, no, you just messed it up for an entire generation. But we're out of that now.
Yes.
Now, people are drinking rosé. The funny part, when I was in Italy, rosé wasn't as ubiquitous as I have come to expect it in America. And this woman next to me even said the same thing. She was like, can I get a rosé? And I go, they don't have it. And she's like, well, I already asked too. She's like, how do they not have a rosé? I'm like, I know, right? I go, but also, it wasn't that long ago where you couldn't get a rosé in the United States at all, unless it was White Zin. But it comes around.
Yeah, but that's an American thing, white zin, which we ruined rosé. Like dry rosé has always been a thing.
But my point is, rosé in the States is now on every menu.
Oh yeah.
But in Europe, it's not like it doesn't have to be. I think we thought, they only drink rosé in the summer.
Yeah.
It's like, the Italians kind of do whatever they want. So
Well, that's true too.
Also, rosé was seasonal at one point in time. A few years back,
Yeah.
rosé had a season, and now you drink rosé year round.
Yeah.
And everybody's making rosé.
Yeah. I just love like the idea of the martini, because it really is just like the way to get a really boozy cocktail in your glass. Like it's like I just want 3 ounces of vodka.
But you kind of have to want something salty also, right? Because either you get like a Gibson version with the onion, or you get the olives. So it's kind of, you need that like briny, salty taste also.
I think.
Versus if you're getting a liquor drink or a whiskey drink, you've got more of like the sweeter caramel profile.
I think if you have like a wet martini, which doesn't get ordered very often, but like a traditional martini where the vermouth is the star, it tends to be a little sweet. It's got a touch of sweetness to it. A dry martini, of course, is just almost little to no vermouth.
Yeah.
So the more vermouth you put into it, the sweeter it possibly could be. And then that just depends on what you're using. But I assume you also are probably going to make a couple of sweet martinis, because you got to appeal to everybody. And it's like, there are a lot of people that aren't going to drink a dry gin martini. So like, I would still classify like a Cosmopolitan or a Lemon Drop or even an espresso martini.
Yes.
As part of that martini catalog. I assume that's available on your list.
Espresso martini is one of the most popular drinks that we make just like everywhere. Everybody.
Do you use some of the curated coffee from Marcel's coffee program?
They make espresso for us. We always have a bottle of espresso in our cooler, so because everybody wants an espresso martini. Some places are offering flights of espresso martinis. It's seeing its Cosmopolitan day, I think.
Yeah.
Cosmopolitan's kind of dominated the market and gotten people thinking about drinking martinis. So I think it's not a bad drink. I mean, even Cosmopolitan's done right, I think, are delicious.
Oh yeah.
Does your bar program and what you're offering different from the front bar to the showroom?
You can order anything in the showroom that you can get in the front bar.
Okay.
So they have access to everything.
Okay. So it's full bar all around.
Full bar completely.
What's the food look like?
Well, light appetizers, like charcuterie. We have commandeered some chicken liver pate from Todd at Rouclair.
Oh, nice.
Olive nuts, just some really basic stuff. Not a lot of hot food because we don't really have the capacity for it.
You don't have a kitchen there.
A kitchen's coming in, but even it's going to be small.
Okay.
We don't have enough room to crank out a bunch of hot stuff, but just enough salt.
Yeah.
And,
so you go there for snacks, not dinner.
Yeah.
Either after dinner or before dinner kind of thing.
Yeah. What's the neighborhood like set right there? What are the restaurants in your hood?
Nothing is really close to us. We kind of like in a desert. It's that whole thing. You go, this is East Main, I better turn around kind of thing is happening. But then you go 2 blocks away, there's like Mescalita and all those kind of places. And then you go back the other way.
Is it Ideals right down the street there?
Oh, no, that's the other
I'm thinking
part.
the opposite side.
Yeah.
Okay, by the way, don't sleep on Ideals. That place is
here really great sandwiches.
I want to get
half, though, and then come back to the other half later.
Yeah,
Pro tip.
I'll crush the whole thing, my friend. I always want those guys on the show, but every time I look at them, I'm like, do you guys want to be on the show? They're always like, well, I'm too busy. I'm making sandwiches. I'm like, yes, sir. And I walk away real fast. But they are busy. They're like, I got time for podcasts. But anyhow.
It's true. They are.
Okay, so with food, it's growing, it's evolving. Yeah, I saw the charcuterie and all that. And then every now and then maybe like a food truck or something like that could be out front.
Well, we have to get a health inspection before they'll let us do food trucks, which is kind of interesting. But that's just Durham has this way of doing things, and so we have to do it the Durham way.
We're in the process now. We filed our application, and so we're working through it. But the concept is to lean on some of our chef friends and do kind of pop-ups and kitchen takeovers in the fall.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there a plan to, do you pair the musician with the chef?
Ooh.
That's interesting.
I wish.
Like your style
we
kind of.
could.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we probably could.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to get back to the jazz, because I'm ignorant when it comes to really jazz and music and sense like that. Although I absolutely love it. We used to go. Our favorite jazz club was right next to Blue Note in Greenwich Village, called Terra Blues.
Okay.
Love that spot. I don't know if you ever go, but because they would have a little bit more on like the up and coming performers or the has-beens, which would then they would go far and beyond. But my question was, you obviously are versed in many different styles of jazz. I mean, you can just say jazz, but that's like saying coffee, right? There's so many different types of coffee.
There's so many flavors.
So does the showroom have a specific style that you guys cater to, or you bring in all styles through this?
We bring in all styles. It's the same kind of goal that Art of Cool had, which was to expand the audience for jazz. Because the other kind of narrative to that is jazz is dead, right? Or jazz is for old people.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do is flip that and show you that it's not dead, it's here, it morphs, right? And it evolves. And so we'll have R&B, we'll have soul, we'll have contemporary jazz, which is more like, I don't know, smooth jazz, like what you hear on hold music sometimes.
Baby making music.
Yeah. We'll have the meditative jazz with Shabaka. We've had Rebirth, brass band, which is more New Orleans dance style.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we run the gambit. We do traditional jazz, which is why we have 2 pianos. We have one in the front in the window for acoustic, and then we have another one that's mic'd up in the back on the stage. That's another thing that kind of sets us apart as a music venue. We have proper backline or music equipment in the building. This is not, we're renting.
Yeah.
It's
you're set up acoustically.
Yes.
What is traditional jazz? Like what should I think of? Like give me a relatively well-known name. Like what would I think of when I think of traditional jazz? Branford. Okay.
Yep. Branford, John Coltrane, Miles Davis.
I always go to Thelonious Monk.
Thelonious Monk.
That's my absolute favorite.
Yes.
The album of Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane playing in the Ruby My Dear and all that, like that little coffee shop that they did. It's one take and it's one microphone. As an audio engineer, I'm like I was captivated. Like for those that don't understand, they put a microphone in that room. Yep. It was just perfect the way they did it. And then there was very little, like Monk and Coltrane at that point had not really played together very often at all.
Right.
And then they just came in and just played, I believe it's like 5 tunes. Mm-hmm. And it blows my mind. I've listened to it so much that now if I'm just like in a mall or shopping, like every now and then you'll just hear it and I just like stop and go, they're playing my song. Like I will have that at my funeral, these songs. Like it's some of the most important music I'd say. But Matt, that's like to me.
But didn't those guys even
get
like
real jazz right there?
But didn't they get like experimental at the end of their careers?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
they did.
So, but that's jazz though. That's what it is.
Yeah,
yes.
That's what it is. So, and I love having this conversation, by the way. But this might sound totally dorky for me to bring this up, but La La Land, right?
Yeah.
If you watch the movie La La Land, Ryan Gosling's character is like all about jazz, but he's all about old jazz, like the way it was, and he wants to keep it going. And like his whole thing is he wants to like have a jazz club at some point, and at some point he meets John Legend, but he plays a character. John Legend's like one of the main stars in the movie, and he meets with him, but John Legend's character is taking jazz into the future, and he's like got loops and drum machines, and you know he's mixing whatever, you know, modern music with old music. And Ryan Gosling's character is kind of like, it pays the bills and it's a gig, but I'll just play because I'm a good piano player and I can play anything, so I'll do this. But meanwhile, like Emma Stone's like, you don't even like this music, and he's like, well, and then John Legend finally like rips into him and is like, do you not realize that this is jazz? He's like, no, man, what you're playing is like modern stuff. He's like, that's what jazz is.
Yes.
If you want jazz to be jazz from the 30s, go back to the 30s. Mm-hmm. Jazz is a constant evolution.
Yes.
And I like as I was hearing this, I'm like, yes, like don't get me wrong, I love listening to my old Monk and Coltrane and Miles Davis, but then you have to listen to something that's happening now to truly get jazz and understand its evolution.
Absolutely.
It's the same assholes that got mad at Metallica for cutting their hair and writing slow songs.
I mean, just music in general. Music continues to evolve. There are, instruments and equipment now that can help them. They can play along with themselves, right? Like, you see a lot of people, let's say Theo Croker was someone that we presented who is like on the cusp of like pushing the music forward trumpet wise, and he will play and then capture it and then loop it and then on stage, right, and then play with himself, like, you know what I'm saying? I know that sounds weird, but
well,
you know
like
what I'm
Ed
saying?
Sheeran
Like,
does it in a
record
pop sense, but yeah, like
Yes.
they do a lot of loop stuff. But yeah, like that's the next the next thing.
Or putting clips of people talking, so mixed media type clips on the front part of or in the middle of what they're performing. So not only do you hear the instrumental part, but then there are messages. So the music is really going other places, right? And that's just how jazz has been evolving. And one thing that we're trying to bring to this area is that when these musicians are coming into town, they're coming from like the who's who of other clubs in this area, in this country. They're coming from Yoshi's. I don't know who that is.
Mono Neon.
Mono Neon. So Mono Neon is coming, and he's a bass god. Like, he used to play with the New Power generation right before Prince passed away. And he is really taking the bass, you know, to other levels, kind of like how Thundercat did. He's like the new Thundercat.
Victor Wooten or something.
Yes. So as soon as he leaves, you know, our 2-night stand, he's going to Yoshi's in Oakland, right? Like, we've had people who, when they left, got on a flight and went to Ronnie Scott's in London, right? Like, we're bringing that level.
Okay, so this is awesome. So how have you managed to create this vibe, this understanding, like this is a premier place to come and showcase your talent with as good as places in the rest of the country? How have you established yourself as that? I mean, obviously there's personal connections, but I guess that's all tied into it.
Personal connections, but like just network from 13 years of doing it. Again, the legacy is built on what I did with Art of Cool. And during that time, meeting other presenters, some of these people are still playing, like, you know, Robert Glasper and Kamasi. And these are all people who are like top of their game now. But 13 years ago, you know, it was kind of built on those relationships. Terrace Martin, you can name the who's who, Christian Scott, who is now, you know, Chief Ajua. All of these people who are like top of their game right now, like 30s and 40s in jazz, they've played for Art of Cool, they've played for me, and so the club is built on that legacy.
So you're at the point now in your career where you make a call to somebody and it's like, oh, it's Doc Cicely, I'm gonna answer the phone.
Yeah, I mean, most people are like, oh, we remember Art of Cool. Yeah, oh, you got a club now? We'll play it, you know, and there aren't that many clubs nationally that are Black female owned, and some of the players really do appreciate that.
Yeah,
because
the musicians speak.
Uh-huh.
It's like a comedy club, right? I mean, like comedy clubs, like you're a comedian, you're on tour, you've got to play at a place, you know that there's a lot of humans that live in a certain town, so you kind of want to be there, but then on top of that, then you're like, well, what's good? And you know that other jazz musicians are like, oh yeah, you got to play here. Like, the sound is right. Sound's important too. Yes. Like, if the stage isn't right or the microphones suck, if the sound engineer sucks, like, they're not going to go. But if all those things are right, then you get a lot of repeat business, which I would imagine that has something to do with it all.
Yeah, I mean, we had a piano player by the name of Orrin Evans, and his drummer is a National Endowment of the Arts jazz master. And during that performance, we got DM'd by Adrian Charles, who is phenomenal on, he does something called Creole Soul. He's from Trinidad, Tobago, and he plays trumpet. He DM'd us during that residency wanting to play. And so Adrian Charles is on our season 3 lineup.
By the way, because you just said DM'd during, I wasn't going to say this, but this is ridiculous. My 14-year-old daughter, Alexandra, just messaged me and asked me what the name of that restaurant that sandwich place was in Durham because she wants a sandwich.
Ideals.
She's talking about Ideals right now.
Sounds like we need to do a collaborative with Ideals.
Ooh, that would be amazing.
That would have to be some like funky, clunky jazz, like some beefy. I don't know what you would
those
call
guys
that.
are from Philly, right?
Yeah, I
they're
think so.
Philly, but Philly, Jersey, New York, it's all tied together, right?
It's kind of all of it.
It's all there, right?
Not all the way the same, but we shared similar.
There's some similar things,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that's like those are gut busting sandwiches. So I don't know what type of jazz you would want to pair with that.
Aren't the OJs from Philly?
I think so.
Right. So we've got
There we go.
a legacy. So a fun fact about a guy who's coming actually next weekend. His name's Remy Williams. And his father used to be the bass player for the OJs.
Like the OJs.
Like the
around-
OJs.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so he is super soulful. He plays the drums, but also is a singer.
Yeah.
And so we have him next weekend. So that's kind of a Philly connection with the
There you
OJs.
go. All right. I think that just coming from the food and beverage perspective, we need to, or I want to, up the game of like doing this pairing thing of food and
like it.
of food
Pop
and
it
beverage
up.
paired with the music.
I
I
like
think
it.
that'd be
Yeah.
cool.
I like
A cool series. I'm sorry again for my naivety. You keep talking about the art of cool. Can
Yes.
you what exactly is that?
So the Art of Cool is now, I guess, a legend.
Yeah.
But it was a music festival
Okay.
and a nonprofit that I started along with Al Strong. The whole point was to expand the audience for jazz. It started in Durham in a very small little art gallery called Labor Love in the Golden Belt district.
Okay.
And we would take over this art gallery after Art Walk and flip it into a jazz club.
Oh, cool.
And so we did that almost every third Friday, and then people in Raleigh loved it, and we started doing it first Friday because that was Art Walk then. And so people started asking us, because we were just doing it just to do it. We didn't have a name. And then someone was like, no, you're an organization. I was like, okay, sure we are. And so we tried to say jazz without saying the word jazz. So we took from the Rebirth of Cool, or the Birth of Cool album, which is a famous Miles Davis album.
That
and
much I know.
flipped it because it was in an art gallery. It's called Art of Cool.
All right.
And so after a while, I started getting into the kind of fundraising game. And we won a contest called the Smafis, or we entered a contest called the Smafis, which was downtown Durham Ink and Chamber type of contest. And so then we didn't win it, but we went into this kind of 60-day bullpen think tank, and we were one of the few nonprofits. And the thing that we were pitching was a music festival for downtown Durham. And so they gave us a little bit of money, and Capital Broadcasting, helped with some funding, and American Tobacco, and we launched a festival. And this festival really went from being like a little grassroots festival to like a big deal for Durham, which then later laid the groundwork for Moog Fest to come, to Durham and do that whole kind of taking over different venues.
Yeah.
So that's how we were. We were 3 days, take over every single venue that you could imagine, whether it was the Carolina Theater, DPAC, the Armory, Pinhook, Motorco, all the places.
Yeah.
And it was Durham's version of hopscotch.
Okay.
Durham's
that makes sense.
version of
Yeah.
hopscotch.
With
Or
a
like
little
a
bit more of
jazz-
the jazz lilt
Yes.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with a jazz spin to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because-
hopscotch has a little bit more like indie band kind
Yeah.
of vibe to it.
Well, also you could say like a jazz version of the Bluegrass Festival that happens here.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
that's like
IBMA.
the fest for bluegrass musicians. That's
Yeah.
like the premier festival.
And we won it because it was, we didn't create, like North Carolina or Raleigh didn't create that festival. That festival existed in Tennessee, I want to say, and they lost like the lease on it or whatever, and like they wanted to have they wanted like a bigger venue. They needed more. They required more, and they put it to the city of Nashville, and they're like, yeah, we can't support it. And Raleigh poked their heads up and said, we got you.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And so Raleigh like brought it in, which I would say like kind of similar to like Matt and I we're not from North Carolina, but we do a podcast called North Carolina Food and Beverage. It's like, we're not from here. We came here and we know how awesome the food is here. Like, sometimes when you're the frog in the boiling water, you don't realize it. So it's like, we're the outsiders coming in and reminding everybody that's local, like, this shit's dope, right? Like, you guys, did you not realize that?
Yeah.
And so that Jazz Fest, or the Bluegrass Festival, is kind of similar to that too. And I think it, like, granted, we've had all like the pandemic and all that stuff, but I think the locals really embrace it, which is cool. And so like they try to make it happen. Just a little going back into jazz. I love just continue talking that conversation to jazz. With all the crazy fanfare and Grammys and all that John Batiste has won.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to think that he's like on the forefront of keeping jazz current, modern, right? Would you agree? Would you weigh in on John Batiste? You know, if for those that don't know, but John Batiste, you know, is like for a long time was Stephen Colbert's music director. He's the one that plays like the cool little piano and all that, like that he walks around with. There was he just had a documentary about he and his life and his lady.
His wife,
Weirdly enough, when I was in Topsail for 4th of July, I'm talking to a couple while we're watching the fireworks go off, and we're just kind of bullshitting. I'm like, what do you do? He's like, I do documentaries. I'm like, oh, anything I've seen? He's like, I did the John Batiste documentary.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what? Oh, really? I'm like, that shit was dope. And he's like, yeah, I did that. I'm like, okay, so you're good at what you do. And he's like, I guess so, yeah. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, any thoughts on just, I feel like before John Batiste got like, before he existed, and he of course did all the music for Soul, the Pixar movie, I think jazz was deader.
Yeah.
And I feel like he kind of is zombifying it a little bit. Do you feel that at all?
So I think John Batiste is a good kind of face for, jazz now, and kind of an entry point, for people who want to get into jazz.
Yeah.
Also, I will say on the R&B side of this, though, like the Herbie Hancock of our time right now is Robert Glasper. There's also a few guys who are like scoring movies that are really kind of keeping it in the forefront and keeping it alive. A while ago, there was a bass player by the name of Esperanza Spalding who was really pushing the movement. And so, there are kind of young people, younger people that are pushing the music. Christian Scott, who now has a different name, but I know him from Christian Scott. But he was like in the Star Wars movie. It's a lot going on as far as how jazzers can evolve from just playing, using a gig like the Colbert gig or whatever, and then using that as a platform to then move into having your own endorsements. I think Christian has one with a car company where if you've seen the ad, it's him playing, but it's clearly a car company. I don't know if it's Mercedes-Benz or something like that, but taking things to the next level.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I can't say his name either, but Siri, how do you say his name, his new name?
Chief Ajua. That's what I'll say. Oh, the full
Chief
name.
Chianatunde Ajua.
Yes.
There you go. You got it.
Chief Ajua.
Yes.
I think Keon Harold probably falls in there too.
Yes, Keon. I don't know if you remember, there was a biopic with
Miles Davis.
It was a Miles Davis biopic with Don Cheadle, and Keon did all of the horns for that. So when you see Don Cheadle playing, portraying what you're hearing is Keon Harold.
Probably one of the best shows I've ever seen too.
Which has been he's played
Which
at
has
Miss-
played.
Yeah, incredible show.
Yeah.
Just
Keon.
Yeah,
Keon
just
has, yes.
one of the best shows, hands down, I've ever seen.
All right.
Just mind-blowingly. The way he connected with the audience just got like really personal, people in the audience crying, and just this really emotional connection that you hardly see what that artist makes. And I think that's one of the beauties of Missy Lane's is that artists can have that interaction with the audience.
Yeah.
And it seems very personal. And one of the most common comments I get when people leaving the show is, man, this was super amazing, intimate show that I've seen. So I think...
What is the capacity for the showroom? Like, how many people?
Seated probably around somewhere 80 to close to 100,
Okay.
and if it's a standing show, around 200 or so.
Okay.
So that's another reason why we keep people here for a couple days, right?
So a bunch of people can see them in a small, intimate setting. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so what we're trying to build is that reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go to, people want to go to DPAC to see this New York experience of off-Broadway. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? But instead of going to this off-Broadway New York experience, it's kind of the New York jazz experience, but right here in downtown Durham.
That's gotta be so cool for the musician too, to like, if they're from wherever, New Orleans, but they get to be in Durham for 3 nights or so, 2 nights.
Yeah.
Like just to immerse yourself into this space and really feel it, rather than just being on tour and like not even know, hello Kansas, Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You don't know what city you're in, but
Yeah.
but that's got to feel even better. I would probably argue that like the second or third performance might even be the best because they're like, I'm
Kind of,
here.
yeah, settled in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know the people.
Yeah.
I have to say also, and maybe this will be an unpopular opinion, but I haven't seen a music show, but I've seen like Broadway type shows at DPAC. I don't think the acoustics are very good at DPAC.
I feel
You're
like
probably
you
right.
need to hit the Jamaican air horns.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what are they? Have 'em.
Thank you.
All right.
Shots.
Wow.
All right.
Hey, do you guys not share that opinion, or are you just am I alone on that?
I don't think I've ever seen a
I
concert.
agree. We went to Duke. No disrespect to Duke. They're a great partner of ours. But we seen Jose James.
Yeah.
And it did not.
Yeah.
He definitely killed it.
Yeah, but depending on where you're sitting, and that's not a great thing for a venue. I sat in the wrong
crowd
seat.
wasn't into it.
Yeah.
It's just a whole different, kind of going back to what you said. Every trumpeter has came through, or saxophone, because I fell in love with that instrument because of Cicely. I get emotional every time.
That's cool.
Every time I find myself, shedding a tear.
Yeah.
Because it is a strong instrument, and it moves my heart chords in a certain way. Just because a piece of metal can make that sound with air is amazing to me. The things that I've seen Theo do, I've seen Braxton do, Marquise, Keon, like all of these great people come through, and just even Al Strong when he's playing, he's another great. You know what I mean? So,
By the way, do you know the story of how the saxophone was invented?
No.
We're not going to get too deep into this, but people that know the story are going, yep, and they're like, have I ever mentioned this?
You've told this on the pod before, yeah.
The story is insane. I'll cut out all the stuff, but for those get a deep dive, check it out. The story of the guy that created the saxophone. His last name is Sax, right? So that's where it comes from. But this was in Austria. There were musicians and like inventors were creating instruments, and this was a thing that was happening hundreds of years ago because we didn't have them. Think about who created a grand piano, right? That's an insane thing to just invent.
Right, yeah.
And so Sax was his father was a musician or a music instrument maker, and this guy has a crazy story. He almost died 6 different times. He was hit by lightning. Something fell on his body. He got trampled by a bunch of things. There's all these crazy things that he shouldn't be alive.
Right.
Then he created I think it was the alto sax. And the day before he was going to show it off at this world fair to get his props and all, one of his competitors destroyed the saxophone. They didn't want him to win.
Wow.
So they destroyed it. Then he had to rebuild it. It took him a year. He rebuilt it again, went out there, and then he didn't win the award. Everyone knew he was the best. They ended up giving the award to someone else because they're like, no, we want to keep pushing you because you're going to keep making better instruments as time goes on. It's this weird thing. So the guy died without any real notoriety, but everyone knew he was the best. And so then I think he created the tenor and the baritone and all these other saxophones. But he started with the alto. It's an insane story how the saxophone even exists today. While talking of music, that is the wildest thing. And I have one last music.
Wait, but how did he create it? What was the inspiration?
Well, he actually took the clarinet was already existing at the time, and his dad was making it. It's a woodwind instrument, and the saxophone's still a woodwind instrument, but the clarinet was made out of wood, like an oboe or something, a bassoon. And he said, "No, I want to do this out of metal." And his dad was like, "You're an idiot. You can't do that." And he's like, "I think I can do this." And so he broke all the rules by like changing it and basically making a brass clarinet,
I see.
And then he changed around. Sound was different, and it took a while, but it is considered, like, as far as like workmanship in the music industry, like one of the greatest feats of all time. Just like how he created that. Anyhow, the last thing I will say about a great interaction. You mentioned Herbie Hancock earlier. Herbie Hancock, by the way, Beverly Hills Cop 4 is out streaming on Netflix.
Yeah.
He wrote Axel F, right?
Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, yeah.
That sounds very Herbie.
Yeah, it's totally Herbie Hancock, right? But
Herbie
everyone
80s.
knows, if like young people, because we have a lot of young people that are listening. I'm kidding. No, we have people that are at least 10, 15 years younger than us. If you don't know who Herbie Hancock is, just put him into Spotify, play the first song, and you'll go, "Oh, wait, what?" And he's basically been sampled by every hip-hop artist, by every musician.
Yep.
He's out there. Well, when I was at school at the MI, Musicians Institute in Hollywood, one of the last few days before I graduated, I went to a lecture, and they were talking about 10.2 surround sound mixing, right? That means like 10 speakers in the room and 2 subs, right? And they're like, let's take a classic album just to show you the ability to do surround sound. So they took Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, right? And they put it on. And as they're playing it, I'm sitting next to this middle-aged black man, and he's like rocking back and forth, and he's like talking to himself, and he's like saying all these things this whole time, and I'm just kind of like looking at him like he's feeling it way more than I'm feeling it. I'm like, this is pretty cool, yeah. And then he's asking like a million questions, and he's just like, wait a minute, what about this? And what about this? And you've done this, and you have done this. And at one point, they get to the point where he figures out that they put Elton John's vocal track on a singular center speaker all by itself. And he goes, wait a minute, you separated Elton John's vocals on one speaker? And they're like, yeah. He goes, oh, he's not going to like that. And they're like, what? And he's like, I know Elton. He's like, he's going to be pissed because now you can take him out of his music completely, or you can take his voice and put him on anything. He's like, what have you done? Like, you've messed it up. Which is funny because AI now you can do all that stuff with all the stems. Yeah. But as they're saying this, the one guy who's up front, he's like, oh, Herbie, you're always busting my balls. And just then I look over and I realize, I'm like, oh, I'm sitting next to Herbie Hancock! And he was like literally busting the guy's balls the whole time. He's like, no, this is beautiful what you're doing, but do you realize what you've done?
Yeah. Open Pandora's box.
Yeah, and at that point, I was just like, okay, this is the coolest thing ever. I was just sitting next to Herbie Hancock in a mixing environment. But
he's such a national treasure. We need to protect him at all times.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So if I could go back to jazz for a minute, I want to talk about
please.
Thursday nights, which is our jazz jam session usually. That's when Branford showed up. One night, I was told everybody, it's like, hey, we're getting out of here right at 9:30 tonight. Told the band, you got to kill it. And 9:05, look who walks up. It's Branford. And so, of course, I don't get to go home early because all the people are fanboying, which we all do, because Branford's like one of the coolest people to talk to. I don't know if you ever had a conversation with him. He's super cool, and he always has something to say. He cracks jokes and everything. And I mean, he literally spent an hour talking to the young musicians, saxophone specifically.
Yeah.
But Thursdays, you get a lot of really just hardcore jazz, pure jazz, which I love. I am an old school jazz person, so I love Thursday nights for that reason. You never know who's going to show up. But always get, how long has this band been together? And when I tell people, oh, no, they don't know each other. Yeah. They've never played together before. They're blown away. But that's the beauty of jazz, is that you hear a song, you can hear a song 10 times, and every time it's going to be different. And that's why I love jazz, that improv that's in it. And I think that may be why some people don't like jazz. It's because you don't get to hear the same thing over and over. You can't just press repeat when people are performing live because you never know who's going to go on a run or when they're going to go on a run. Yeah. But Thursday nights, Really, really, if you really like jazz a lot, I think you should show up on Thursday nights into the jazz jam sessions. They are amazing.
That's great. That's date night for me.
Yeah,
So
it's an awesome experience.
Do you have to get a ticket? Or?
It's a ticket. It's $10, but it is worth every penny of it because
for sure.
some night we might have 10 to 20 musicians
can
there.
you buy a ticket at the door?
You can buy
Yeah.
a ticket at the door. You can buy a ticket online.
Cool.
It's a really great intimate setting. It's probably going to get
time
so big.
does it start?
It starts at 7:30 to 9:30.
Awesome.
7 to 9:30.
7
We've
to
been doing
9:30.
7 to
even
9:30, but
better.
usually it goes about 10. Most nights it goes to 10.
Yeah,
Depending on who walks in.
Well, that's
Yeah.
in 2 days. Actually, for the listeners that are listening to this podcast right now, it's today.
But we don't have it this week, right?
Like,
Yeah,
well,
Yeah, we have a special show this
we have
week.
a special show this
But
week.
we'll be back on. It is an amazing show. I mean, and it's not hot. You know, we have air conditioning there.
Yeah.
That's a dig. That's
Low
a dig in the
shade.
other place that
That-
does jazz.
that's low-key
I have to take it. I have to do a little
Shade.
dig there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an amazing set. Right now it's in the front room, but it looks like it's going to grow so much that we're going to have to move it to the back to the bigger room because it's really, really growing. It's when people come, they're really surprised at how great it is. I mean, we really get some top-notch musicians. We just had Dr. Ari Wiggins, who was former head of the jazz program at Central. He sat in this past week. Just really, really incredible music.
Well, it's been said many times before, and I'll say it again, but what Matt and I do here in this room is jazz, you know. Kidding, of course. But
Yeah, nobody's ever said
A
that.
little sappy jazz, but jazz
if I
nonetheless.
could have a nickel for every time I've said
It'd
it,
still be the same.
I'd have
the
a
same
dime.
yeah.
Yeah. But I actually literally said this to somebody the other day because they were asking about podcast production, and you know, there's like a couple ways to do it. Like there's scripted, and you know, then like very edited. And I'm like, oh, the NCF&B is very much just jazz. We're just flowing. I said the most Matt and I ever do is like we'll meet for 5 minutes before the show starts and be like, so wait. You do know that this person had blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, okay. And they also told us via email, don't mention this other thing. Like, okay, yeah. And like that's like the equivalent of like musicians going, what key is this in? Okay, yeah, all right, we got it. And then just moving from there. But yeah, so NCF&B, jazz.
Jazz. I like it.
It's been said many times.
Many
I
times,
can
many
see that. I
ways.
can see that. I can see that.
Before we get out of here, just one last question. Who is Missy Lane, or what's Missy Lane?
My middle name is Elaine.
Okay.
And so when I was growing up, my grandfather used to say, "Come here, Missy Lane, come here, Missy Lane." And so he was saying Miss Elaine, but his Mississippi accent slurred
Missy
it
Lane.
together to be Missy Lane.
And then Assembly is like Assembly Hall in New Orleans, kind of ode to
Yeah.
that.
Kind of an ode to just an assembly room, assembly hall where people can assemble, and music is kind of the base. But then we're going to commune together. We're going to, have a good time.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
And drink.
and drink, yeah, of
Our
course.
episodes drop on Thursday. And
Yeah.
Thursday is that awesome night. So like if you're listening to this, go tonight to Durham. That's where you have to be.
Yeah.
Exactly. Go over to Missy Lane's Assembly Hall. You will not only eat and drink, but you will hear extremely merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.